Excited that you're here. I'm Debbie Harpham, and I am with Adventures by the Book. I am filling in for Susan Macbeth as she's traveling, as she's out of the country at this time. I have the honor of facilitating this meeting, and I'm really excited to have you guys all here. So we're glad you're here, the first inaugural virtual Adventures by the Book Club meeting, and we're delighted to have you all here and hope that you'll engage in the conversation if you're comfortable doing so. So a couple general housekeeping things that I want to mention to you is the discussion is being hosted in a meeting format, and that means that you all have the ability to unmute yourself and chat and be part of the conversation just as a book club. But we do ask as a courtesy that you would keep yourself muted because it can be distracting, and I understand sometimes you don't realize you're unmuted, but I will go ahead and try to go in and mute people if it's not time for you to chat, and just so you know that that'll be happening. And if you would like to ask questions, then we invite you to do so in the chat box throughout the conversation. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll also have a Q&A section at the end of the conversation. And if you want to ask your question directly, then you can raise your hand. You can do that in the little reaction box at the bottom of the screen. It looks like a little smiley face with a plus on it. And with your hand raised, then we can invite you to ask your question and converse directly with the authors. Otherwise, if you want to put the questions in the chat box, then Simon and Dorothy will be happy to ask the questions on your behalf. So I think that takes care of that. I think what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and introduce you to Simon and Dorothy. So here we go. First of all, we have Dorothy Minor. I think some of you may know her as the Book Whisperer. She does book reviews for us. She has her own book blog. She's a retired English professor. In retirement, she leads now four, Dorothy, book clubs, 2 in person and 1 on Zoom. As an avid reader, Dorothy writes book reviews on her personal blog site, Pardelier's blog, and I hope that Sarah will be able to put the link in the chat box, and I hope that you'll visit her blog because she writes a lot of reviews. She's a very avid reader. So several years ago, she became involved with the Turkish community in Broken Arrow in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they meet to share cultures and food and discuss the idiosyncrasies of the English language. Her Zoom book club includes American and Turkish friends in Broken Arrow, Tulsa, and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Houston and Austin, Texas. In 2016, Dorothy joined the board of the Friends of the Tulsa City County Libraries, where she has served as chair of the Adult Creative Writing Committee, recording secretary, and is currently president for the 4th year. She's also the co-editor of The Senior Connection, the newsletter for the Tulsa Community College retirees. So she's certainly got some book credentials. Welcome, Dorothy. We're so glad you're here. And also, I'd like to introduce you to Simon Chibuk. Simon resides in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is Western Canada. He's quite the avid reader, and his go-to genre is historical fiction, but he does branch out if something catches his interest, which is often. I've seen your to-be-read list. Of course, reading is not his only interest. Simon also enjoys watching movies, sports, and hanging out with friends and family. Simon's an active member and administrator for the 3rd Thursday of the month Historical Fiction Virtual Book Club, which formed on Facebook in December of 2020 as an outlet for historical fiction lovers to come together amidst the pandemic. The club currently has over 900 members, and they're from across the US and Canada. Each month, average of 20 to 50, although I've seen more, members log into their Zoom discussion of a historical fiction which has been suggested and voted upon by members. They invite authors to join when possible to enrich their discussions and introduce their members to the craft of researching and writing about a wide spectrum of historical events, people, and time periods. Simon's active on Goodreads, where he often posts book reviews. Please be sure to follow him there, and also on his Instagram account as he posts book reviews there. And I'm hoping Sarah will be able to add links for that also. So welcome, Simon. Welcome, Dorothy. And without further ado, I hand the meeting over to you.
Simon, are you beginning?
Who the fuck is that lady? Oh, Simon.
I guess I'll just start if you. Oh, not Dorothy. You want to start?
No, you start.
Okay. Well, first off, Kate and Janie, welcome to the Adventure by the Book Virtual Book Club inaugural meeting. I'll just do a quick introduction for Kate. Kate Quinn is a New York Times bestselling author of historical fiction, including her novel The Alice Network and The Diamond Eye. Kate Quinn has her master's and bachelor degree from Boston University in classical voice. And she currently,
And I have the pleasure of introducing Janie Chang. Janie uses personal connection in writing her historical fiction. She takes from her family history, 36 generations of recorded genealogy. And she loves to travel, as noted by the places that she has lived. Janie credits her father as a great storyteller who kind of started her on this journey. And she's grateful for the history of her family from which she can draw. And you may be surprised to learn that she started out in computer science and then took the writer's studio at Simon Fraser University, which led her then to writing her novel. So please welcome Janie too.
Well, thank you guys for inviting us here. It's lovely to be part of the inaugural book club. So I'm so glad you are having us here and also reading The Phoenix Crown.
And I think, Kate, maybe we should start out with just a quick summary of The Phoenix Crown, because it sounds like some people here have read it and some people are still waiting to read it for their book clubs. So
we'll keep our talk today spoiler free for those who have not read or who have not finished yet. So just in case you're worried about this. And in essence, I would say that The Phoenix Crown is the story of two very different women. One, a New York City opera singer whose career is desperately in need of a reboot, and the other, a resourceful Chinatown seamstress in San Francisco, desperately trying to escape an arranged marriage. And the two of them are thrown together in the chaos and fire and bloodshed following the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And after that, their lives will never be the same. In a nutshell, that is The Phoenix Crown. So I will say too, one of the questions Janie and I tend to get, every single time every event that we were on tour or every book club that we have talked to is, what is it like? How did you come to write a book together? And how do you write a book together? So we thought we would start there in terms of probably knocking a great many of your questions out right away. Janie, do you want to kick us off there?
So the first thing I want to say is, yes, Kate and I really wanted to write a novel together that would be enjoyable for readers. But it was also extremely important for us that we should finish the process and still be friends. Because as you can imagine, once you finish writing the book, the promotion includes going on book tour together. And the idea of having made enemies with your co-author and having to sit side by side on Delta Airlines, we wanted to stay friends. And so one of the things that we did was we plotted things out really, really carefully, far more in detail than I normally would. And Kate, possibly more than you normally would too.
Well, we were on a tight deadline for this book, and so we knew that we would not have the kind of leeway that you do when it's your own book to, occasionally take the wrong turn or have to backtrack and figure things out. We knew we didn't have time for that, and we didn't want to waste each other's time the way we are so cavalier about wasting our own. So we knew this was going to be a lot of plotting and a lot of, figuring out in advance exactly what kind of story we wanted to tell. And I will say, first of all, just in terms of how we met, because people always do ask about that. Janie and I met on a little 3-author, 3-city book tour in 2017. We both just had a book out recently. Our publisher decided that they could send the two of us with another author, Jen Robson. I guarantee you, some of you have read some of her books. The Gown, Coronation Year. She's a fabulous writer. And none of us knew each other, and they were going to send us on a little, 3-author, 3-city book tour. And I can tell you that everything that could possibly go wrong with a book tour went wrong on that one. I mean, if there was luggage, it was lost. If there were plane connections, they were missed or canceled. If there were cars, the cars broke down or, got flat tires. Everything could go wrong. And we could have ended that little tour scratching each other's eyes out. And instead, we were all really the best of friends. We had so much fun. And that really was what made me think later on, when I had this idea about very amorphously about, writing a book about the San Francisco earthquake, and thought that maybe Janie would want to join me on it, is that I thought, I bet, since we were able to survive what was known forever afterward as the hysterical fiction tour with our friendship intact, the odds that we could write a book together and also have our friendship be intact by the end of it honestly seemed pretty good.
And it turned out the omens were good. For one thing, Kate and I discovered that neither of us are morning people. And you have no idea what a relief that is, to be working with someone else who is not a morning person. The other thing is that we are both workaholics. Therefore, at no point in this process did either of us feel that the other person was slacking off. And if you have ever been in a group project at school or in your office and ever felt that there was someone not pulling their weight, you know how destructive that can be. And then I would say the other thing is that both of us have a deep and firm and abiding faith that anything can be solved with the use of a good spreadsheet. Yeah, absolutely.
Spreadsheets. This book is dedicated to our husbands, who indeed did a lot in terms of keeping us fed and keeping our pets entertained while we were in the process of drafting. This book could also very well be dedicated to Google spreadsheets, because we plotted this book out meticulously in terms of exactly what chapter. I determined originally that, I would write all the chapters from Gemma, the opera singer's point of view, and Janie would write all the chapters from Suling, the seamstress's point of view. And so therefore I had the odds, she had the evens, and we had it broken down in a spreadsheet, how much time passed in each chapter, where did the chapter begin, where did it end, what happened in it. And that gave us the freedom to do quite a bit of independent work, because, we were living 2 to 4 hours separately from each other. We only met in person, I'd say a few, like 4 or 5 times in order to actually, during the process and drafting this, at least 2 of those meetings were just the outlining, because that was when we were literally filling out that spreadsheet and putting together that timeline. But once we knew what kind of book we wanted to tell, and really what it came down to was, I knew the heroine I wanted to create. Janie looked at the history and created a heroine for herself who she was interested in. And then we just literally thought, well, we're going to throw these women together at an earthquake and stir. And that's pretty much what we did. It was about 2 women who would, in the ordinary course of life, never even probably met, much less become friends. But they do become friends, because that's what disasters are. Disasters are great equalizers. So once we figured out, that we could write independently, we were really off to the races.
And I think that also answers a question that people often ask, which is, how did you get your voices to work together? You have different writing styles. And the thing is, we managed to sidestep that issue, because we have, by writing from, Kate from Gemma's point of view and me writing from Suling's point of view, and each chapter being written in 2 different points of view, because they were being told by 2 different characters, it didn't really matter as much that the voices should be the same. And so we're really pleased that between the spreadsheets, which allowed us to dovetail the action, and taking the tactic of alternating points of view, people have told us that it's quite a seamless story to read, that you're not being jolted from one point of view to the other. So, and I have to say, I think after a while, because we've been working together so much, I think maybe our styles kind of got closer to each other. I wouldn't say we merged our styles, but we got a little bit closer. It's kind of like, when you read Hemingway a lot, after a while, all your sentences get very short and terse and choppy,
So the way we would do it, we would each draft our chapters, according to what was next on the spreadsheet. And then, as soon as those chapters were done, we would upload to a shared Google Drive so that the other person could read it, and then therefore have what they needed in terms of being able to then seamlessly dovetail their own next chapter with it. Now, sharing rough drafts was definitely a hair-raising part of the process, because I think most writers, and not just myself, feel very much like it's very vulnerable to put yourself in the situation where you are letting someone read your just decanted from the brain rough draft. But you have to get over that. So we did get over it, and after a while, it really got very exciting because I'd throw a chapter up there, and I would just think, I can't wait to read, to see what Janie thinks of it, and because I can't wait to read what she's going to do next. And we kept our work pace in that way, just alternating away and uploading. We kept up a pretty seamless pace. I don't think one person ever got maybe more than 2 or 3 chapters ahead of the other person at most. And so anytime that we had any particular, thought about as we were going about editing, that was something that we made sure, that we approached with a great deal of respect. It was the way that we had conceived of it in, that Janie would write half the chapters, all the ones from Sue Lang's point of view, and I'd write all of Gemma's. It meant that though it was our book, it was my chapters and her chapters. So therefore, when I read hers, I wouldn't dream of just starting to rewrite them. Instead, if I had a thought about it, I would just put in a comment saying, hey, can we pick up the pace here? It feels like it's dragging. Or she might say on mine, it's like, I really think Sue Ling would react a lot more vehemently to that comment there. Can we dial it up a bit? And, then I would say, absolutely. And then, likewise, when we had our each other's heroines crossing into our chapters, if I had Sue Ling in a scene that was from Gemma's point of view, I might just put in for the dialogue, a bracket and just say, I'd like Sue Ling to say something along these lines. Can you go ahead and fill something in that you think is something she would say? Or, I might rough in some dialogue and then just add a note saying, please feel free to change this up at any point, any way you like, so that it sounds like the most like Sue Ling. And Janie did the same for Gemma. And that way our heroines were sure to sound consistent from chapter to chapter, regardless of who was writing them.
And this is one area where we really wanted to be careful, because we had heard horror stories about this being, the editing, cross editing being where friendships fall apart. But honestly, I think the other great thing was that Kate and I both adore each other's writing, and we both really respect each other as authors. So, I mean, we would never dream of redlining each other's work. Everything was in a comment bubble to the side. So this is how we worked for quite some time, and then, sent it into beta readers, and then sent it into our actual editor, and then when the feedback came from our editor, I was living on the Sunshine Coast by then, so I drove a couple of hours to Vancouver. Kate drove a couple of hours north to Vancouver. We locked ourselves into a hotel room and basically did nothing but drink coffee, order takeout, and work on the copy edits. And I think we were there for 3 nights.
It took us about 3 solid days, but we pretty much blitzed through the whole thing, all the major edits that had to be done. That was one of our other actual in-person meetups for that. And
I think it must have taken another 48 hours for the caffeine to release from our bloodstreams.
Yeah, there was a lot of coffee drunk in that room, but it did work.
Yeah.
In any case, that's the general overhaul of how we actually worked through the book. I am seeing one comment on the side with a question, which I figured I would go ahead and answer while we're at it. But from Janice, I'm listening to the books on CDs and really enjoying the dramatization by the 2 narrators. Did we have any input on the audiobook? Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. We were so thrilled. So the 2 narrators, 2 voice actors are Saskia Marleveld and Catherine Chin. And the reason Kate and I were super thrilled is because Saskia and Catherine voiced my previous solo book, The Porcelain Moon, and that audiobook actually won an audiophile award. So we were just so happy when our publisher was able to snag Saskia and Catherine to do the Phoenix Crown.
Yeah, that ended up being, we're thrilled with how they did it. Saskia has actually voiced all of my other books, starting with the Alice Network. And so I was really thrilled to have her back on anything. And then, just the idea that she already was kind of a dream team with Catherine Chin, and we knew how well this would work, it would just really made everything great, because we know that for audiobook listeners, you know, it is all about the narrator, and Saskia and Catherine both have a lot of fans. So we're so happy with the way that has turned out. So if you guys want to raise hands if you want to ask a question in person, or just go ahead and type it into the one on the side, we can go ahead and answer questions. And I do see one from Mindy. Alice Network and The Huntress are two of my most cherished books. Oh, thank you. Do I plan on releasing any other solo authored book in the near future? Oh, yes. I do have two books after The Huntress. There's The Rose Code and The Diamond Eye. So if you have not read those, look them up. And I even have a novella that is only a couple of bucks on Amazon called Signal Moon. So there's that one too. But I do have, after The Phoenix Crown, it is coming this July 9th, is my next solo book, which is called The Briar Club. And that is a story of an early 1950s Washington, D.C. all women's boarding house. And it is the motley group of women who live there. And in the height of the McCarthy era, where you have the Red Scare and the Lavender Scare, the Cold War, the beginning of the space race, the standoff with Russia, you know, the women's World War II baseball leagues are coming to an end. You know, there was so much going on in that period. And I really can't wait for that book to be hitting shelves, which it does on July 9th. So I am just starting to gear up all over again. But Jenny, do you want to tell readers what your next is going to be as well for solo books?
Hold on. First of all, I'm going to say that one of the perks of being Kate's friend is I get early copies of her book. So I have read The Briar Club, and I can tell you, she has so many characters, and she manages to make you feel so invested in every single one. You want life to work out really well for every single one of them. And when this disaster happens, you will not put the book down. That's all I can say. So
thank you.
Loved it. My next book, which, by the way, on Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I emailed the manuscript to my editors. It's called The Fourth Princess, and it is a Gothic novel set in 1911 Shanghai. And it is, I mean, I love Gothic novels, so I thought I would like to give a try. And of course, it's set someplace back in history, so it still counts as historical fiction. And that book actually, because of very long lead times these days for getting books out, will be in the January to March 2026 timeline. So, but it means I get some time off. I get to pay attention to my husband, who's looking very grumpy these days, you know.
I will say we both have, that's another way Janie and I found out we have something in common, is we both love Gothic novels. And we realized that we both read Gothic novels way too young. For me, it was Jane Eyre at age 10. And for Janie, it was Wuthering Heights at, what, were you 8?
No, I was 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, when I read Wuthering Heights, and I can tell you, it set me up for many, many years of bad dating decisions. You know, it took me a while to learn that like brooding, damaged men weren't always the best choice. So
yeah, it's that whole thing of like, yes, I know he's brooding and damaged. He's also 6.5 feet of red flags in human form. Just let it go. But in any case, we do have a few more questions there. Let's see. Were there ever any times when the flow of the book from one chapter to another just didn't make sense? How did you keep the story moving forward while writing alternate chapters?
Well, you know, I think that was really the goal of laying it out chapter by chapter, row by row on a spreadsheet, was that it made sure that the action would keep going. So that did two things. It made sure the action would keep going. And because we had discussed everything in advance, it made sure that we were both working on the same story.
We also did a certain amount of plotting. We focused most on the plotting that was right ahead of us. Like we sort of divided the book a little bit, where we focused most of our plotting early on the beginning of the book through the chapter where Gemma and Suling really meet and have their first real conversation. And like that was important. So we plotted that out, and then we knew some things were going to shift. So then we knew what happened afterward, like from the time they meet to the earthquake. But then at that point, once we got there, there was a certain amount of shifting in the plot. It's like, okay, we can tweak a few things us now, and now we can go ahead with it and get us through the earthquake. And then once we were done with the earthquake, it was, all right, let's really plot the aftermath now that we're here, because we knew that some things were going to change in the writing. But because of the spreadsheet and because of, sort of working our way up to individual goals within the book, we really didn't have too many problems. At any time we hit a snag, we would just hop on Zoom and just be like, all right, let's brainstorm this, let's find a solution. And that is really the advantage with being part of a writing team rather than it just being you, because if it's just you trying to find a solution to your book, you just sit there banging your head against a virtual and sometimes an actual literal wall until it happens. And that can take a while. But when you have someone else to bounce ideas off of, you find a solution much faster than you will on your own. And often it's a much better solution than you would have found on your own. So really, we just relied on, the crowdsourcing process with each other to get us over any hurdles that we hit. And that worked very well.
There's a lot
Let's
of
see.
interest. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of interest in Alice Eastwood. Leslie says that she needs her own book. And then Judy said, why did you decide to include this botanist in the story?
Well,
Oh my goodness. How could
Alice
you
almost
not
took over the
include Alice? I mean, Alice nearly took over the book. She's just an amazing real character. I'm so glad you liked her.
And we knew from the beginning we wanted to have her as part of this because she pops up in almost any retelling or research book about the San Francisco earthquake. And that is because, she really was quite an extraordinary trailblazing woman. She was in her late 40s. She was the head of the botany department at the California Academy of Science in 1906. And this is not a spoiler, by the way. It's like all over her Wikipedia page. But she was a big part of the earthquake's lore because she had an astoundingly, daredevil and gasp-inducing moment of bravery where she personally rescued 1,500 rare plant samples from the Academy of Science. That was her life's work when she realized that the museum was going to be devoured by the fires that followed the earthquake and there was no saving it. And she got out of San Francisco with like those 1,500 samples and the clothes on her back and not much else. And we thought, that is such a great scene. It has got to go in the book. And, so it does go in the book, and it's just a matter of how you're going to see it, and you'll know it when you get there. But the other thing, too, was Alice, since our heroines are fictionalized based on, the kind of women who did exist at the time, but they are fictionalized. Alice was a real historical figure. So that's always fun to include. And plus, there's the fact, too, that, our two women in their very different ways are striving to be independent and to have turned their various passions into careers. Gemma is trying to be an opera singer, a star, and she's struggling to make that leap from the chorus to the main spotlight. And Suling is a very talented embroideress who is starting to realize that her skill with her needle is something that won't just like maybe make her a little pin money on the side, but it could be a major career for her if she could just make the right connections and make the right leap. And Alice is proof to both of our heroines that it is possible for a woman to forge her own path and make her own way with a passion and a talent for something. She has done it. She's older than they are. And so she's in a position to be a little bit of a mentor as well as a friend to both of them. And so that's how we brought her into the book, to be a little bit of a link to both of our women and, between them before they really get to know each other.
I have to say that, yeah, when we went to San Francisco for our research trip, one of the major thrills was going to the California Academy of Sciences. And when they found out that we were really interested in Alice Eastwood, they rolled out the red carpet for us. The librarian must have brought out 3 cartloads of materials, all belonging to Alice. We got to touch and look at some of the, the little diaries she wrote from when she traveled to France once. And then there was the typewritten account of what happened to her during the San Francisco earthquake, in her own words. It was just amazing. Because absolutely, she was our hero too by the time we finished doing the research.
Yeah, so Alice really was a lot of fun, and I know that she's been a real favorite for readers so far. So that's really fun that we are not the only ones geeking out over her. I noticed we have another question from Leslie. Any plans to collaborate again? I love the Phoenix Fair. Oh, thank you. Well, I would say for collaboration, well, for one thing, Janie and I both have books that we have to get off our own plate first of our own. Like I had to finish the Briar Club, which I actually had to abandon 40,000 words in, and then I wrote my part of the Phoenix Crown, and then I had to go back to it and finish it. So I had to get Briar Club off my plate, and then I have another book coming after that I'm contracted for. So I have to do that first. And Janie also has Fourth Princess.
Yes.
So we have our own stuff right now. And also there's the things like our spouses and our pets would like to remember what we look like since we really did sort of disappear into our studies working on this for, over a year. And then we disappeared even more, when it came time to hit the road for book tour for this when it was released. So never say never. I mean, we had a blast doing this. It would just be a matter of finding a time when we have a little bit of breathing room to think about adding another project to the schedule. And then of course, finding a project that is of equal fascination to both of us. Because, that's the thing when you collaborate is that you really have to both be invested in it really hardcore, because you're going to be spending a few years with this history, with this subject, with these books. And so you really need to make sure that it's something, we need to make sure it was something that both of us really wanted to do. But, who knows, we may find that in future and, lightning will strike twice.
And I'm at other book club meetings, I've had people ask, oh, would you collaborate with another author now? And all I can think of is, it was so ideal. It was such a dream sort of a collaboration with Kate. Anything else would probably be not feel as ideal. So I don't know. I don't know that I'd ever collaborate with anyone else. I mean, Kate actually had to talk me out of being a lone wolf because she's collaborated on other books before.
I mostly have done other books though with larger groups. Like I did Ribbons of Scarlet with 5 other authors, and that was a different experience for sure, because with 5 of us, we had much more individualized parts of our books. It was not nearly as interwoven. And that was the kind of thing where we ended up, it was a little bit more individualized. It wasn't as blended together as what Janie and I did. And so this was a totally, even though I have done collaborations before, this was still very much a learning experience for me, just having the one work wife, instead of 5. So it ended up working really well. So do we have any more questions? Because I think we've hit up the ones in the chat. If anybody wants to throw any more out there, or perhaps unmute themselves and ask.
This isn't a question, but it seems to me that disastrous trip you took together where so many things went wrong showed you how your friendship could endure, and because you just took things in stride and dealt with them as they came up.
It did. I mean, the fun part about traveling with writers is that they immediately, in the face of disaster, start spinning everything into stories. So it's like, if you have something bad that happens on the road, not only do you have someone that you could bitch to, which is really very, very essential, but you also have somebody who's going to be sitting there going, I could get a blog post out of this, or I could get a good, really funny social media post out of this, or how do we spin this for our Instagram stories in some way that'll be entertaining for people who are following us there. So we had that, and that translated nicely to when we were on book tour as well, because it's a lot. Book touring could be it's lovely meeting the readers, but it is hard because you're different city every day, a lot of hotels, a lot of tired room service Caesar salads. And it's a lot of fun when you have somebody with you, if for no other reason than in the morning, you have somebody who is also not a morning person, as we've mentioned, who does not want to talk to you. But, if they have had to get up within the last, 45 minutes and until the first cup of coffee is hit, and someone who can, you guys can watch each other's bags while someone else goes to the bathroom or goes off to get those cups of coffee in the first thing in the morning while in the waiting room.
So you know what, while Kate was talking, I found the link to my blog from 2017, which
yes,
for the Hysterical Fiction Tour, complete with pictures if you want to read it at some point in the future. But
I think it links to mine as well. Janie and I both wrote our accounts of that particular tour, and it was funny. My God, it was funny. So if you would like to read about the hysterical fiction tour, we have not one but two accounts that'll link from Janie's link there.
Right. Okay, so there's a question in chat. How long did it take from the time of the decision to the day of publication? When did
Oh
we?
goodness. Did we start what, beginning of,
Was it
we started-
2022?
was it beginning of 2022? And then we had the book sold within a few months. And then that was all very quickly because we 2022, and then we had to get it finished by the end of 2022, right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so we were really throwing the idea around early 2022, and then
It may have even been like November 2021, and then
yeah, it might have been
Because-
at the very end of 21 that we very first started
Yeah.
talking to each other about it. So let's say very end of 2021, and then the book came out 2024 in February. Although it
Yes.
was actually supposed to come out in September of 23, we damn near killed ourselves making that deadline. And then as soon as when the book was in the can, we were told, there was just internal publication reasons. They were saying we'll have a better chance of some of the big orders from, stores like Target or Costco, things like that. That'll be a better chance of that order, of those big orders, and for the sales if we push it to the following season. And so we sort of shrugged. I mean, it's like it wasn't ideal, but we wanted to give the book its best shot. So the book was pushed from September of 2023 to February 2024.
Ooh.
I follow Kate on
do
Goodreads and follow Janie now as well. How do you find time to write, tour, keep up with social media, and spend time with your families? Do you sleep?
Oh, that is such a fraught question. Kate is so much better at being organized than I am. Somehow she also manages to knock books off her TBR list. I don't do it very well. In the end, this past year, I've actually hired someone to help me with my social media, to schedule the postings. I mean, I still write the content, I still take the pictures and so on, but she just makes sure that it happens on time and that I get my newsletter out on time. So it is difficult, but sometimes it's also a real pleasure because we have author friends who have new books coming out, or they just got a book cover okayed, and they'll say, well, can you post and help spread the word? And that's always such a joy to do. So do we sleep? Barely. I barely sleep. How can you improve?
The work-life balance is always a little bit tough. I mean, people ask me, like, how do you manage to get so much read and you also do, books, and you write your own books? And my thing tends to be, well, I have no children and I have no other hobbies. I do have 3 dogs who insist that I have to leave the house once in a while to actually get them walked. But other than that, that's probably the reason why I can write books and also read a lot, is that's pretty much what I do all the time. When it comes, but also these things come in cycles. I mean, like it's very much a cycle, a writer's life. So when you're in drafting mode, like we were all of 2022, we weren't doing very much we were not traveling. We were not doing much in the way of social media, except maybe, like you have your scheduled posts, your things. All right, I'll do a little bit here and a little bit there. But that's what we were doing, was drafting and eventually editing. And then when you're in the promotion side of things, where it's all about the book has just come out, you're traveling, you're going to events, you're talking to readers, you're hardly doing any writing or drafting at all at that point. It is all about the social media and the traveling and the events. So a writer's life does tend to go in these cycles, from like the time when it's all about the traveling and events and the talking about the book, and then it'll go into a more quiet time when it's all about the drafting and the researching. So it's really just sort of the swing from one extreme to the other. Oh, I have there's a question. I think.
Yeah, about Phoenix Crown and its significance in the book.
Oh yeah.
So the Phoenix crowns are these elaborate headdresses that were worn by the empresses of China. And because the emperor is the dragon and the empress is the phoenix. So these crowns, one of the main features were ornaments made from kingfisher feathers, that bright, intense blue of kingfisher feathers that never fade, because the blue is like physically an optical illusion within the feather itself. It's not dyed or anything like that. So these are ornaments that are made by cutting out pieces of kingfisher feather and gluing them onto a backing of silver gilt or something like that, and then assembling them into beautiful ornaments that then go onto a complete crown. So one of the things that Kate and I did was we got on Etsy and thought, well, not that we ever thought we could afford a phoenix crown, the ones that are complete and have been pulled out of, you know, Ming and Qing dynasty tombs are all in museums, but there were, you know, hair ornaments and jewelry made from kingfisher feathers. And let me just see if I can get this onto here. So this is a little traveling box, like a show and tell that we made. And those are kingfisher feather hair ornaments. And as you can see, they're quite delicate. And if you can imagine that that blue is feather, it's like feather that's been cut and then mounted on. So very, very fine work. And so this jewelry was actually more expensive than gemstones because of the artistry that was required. So the significance of the phoenix crown is that one of the characters in the novel has a collection of Chinese antiquities, including an entire phoenix crown that was taken from the looting of the Forbidden City back in 1900. So, and that is also, and because this person collects Chinese antiquities, it offers an opportunity for my character Su Ling to get a, you know, to get a move ahead in life. So,
and it really enabled us to sort of explore something that we found really fascinating, which was, you know, writing this book with Su Ling as a main character. You really can explore, you know, the sort of duality of the attitude toward the Chinese and also, but toward Chinese history and culture, because Su Ling and the rest of the inhabitants of Chinatown, I mean, they are segregated in this very crowded little 6-block segment where they have to live. You know, they're constantly reading in the papers how, you know, the politicians are thundering about how the Chinese are nothing but a source of, you know, disease and sin and, you know, need to be wiped away. And there's this tremendous, you know, fear mongering and othering of, and, you know, the great amount of daily racism that they encounter from the white San Francisco inhabitants. But at the same time, there was also this fascination with, and, you know, a whole fad among Westerners for chinoiserie. And that was because there were so many antiques that had been looted from the sacking of the Forbidden City and made their way west. So suddenly there were these, you know, these collections of Chinese porcelain, Chinese tapestries and scrolls, you know, Chinese, you know, figurines, and the wealthy were collecting them. And so it was this, you know, on the one hand, the racism, the hatred, and on the other hand, the exoticization and the fetishization of Chinese culture and, you know, Chinese artifacts. And so we do have, you know, a Gilded Age millionaire in this book who has a tremendous collection of Chinese antiquities. The Phoenix Crown is sort of the jewel in that collection, and it ends up being a critical clue and a critical thing that ends up driving a portion of the plot in terms of when it appears, when it disappears after the earthquake, and how all of that factors in the lives of our ladies.
There's a question about who are some of your favorite modern authors?
Wow, I don't think there's any one, but at the moment, the author that I'm recommending to everyone is a British author named Claire North, because she's written a trilogy. The third book in the trilogy is coming out in July, I believe, which is about Penelope. So you know, Odysseus is off to the Trojan War and having all these adventures, and what are the women doing back at home? So her, Claire North's first book of this trilogy is called Ithaca, and I just love it. And I told Kate to read it, and it's smart and it's snarky, and it's more than just a feminist retelling of the Odyssey and the Trojan War from the women's point of view. I just, you know, and she has written tremendous adult / fantasy type books that her imagination is unbelievable.
Yeah, Claire North was someone that Janie turned me on to, and I'm very glad she did. I've been reading my way through her backlist with great pleasure. I read a lot of times, not only colleagues, because, you know, Janie and I have so many wonderful historical fiction colleagues, but I get to read a lot of ARCs as well. Also, because people send us books for cover quotes. So some of the books I've read recently for ARCs have been, I read, I didn't get this one in time for a cover quote, but I did just finish it just before it came out. It was The Ballad of Jacques de la Haye, which is about a Black female pirate and during the golden age of piracy in Hispaniola. And that was a really fantastic read. So we get to read a lot of stuff in advance, and we get to read a lot of things from our lovely colleagues too. And it is a great part about this job. I've also seen, let's see.
In event of a natural disaster such as earthquake / fire, what would you risk the most to save? And Simon, that's actually a question that popped up in the writing of our novel, which is for each of our characters, major and minor, the good guys and the bad guys, what did they run to save? What mattered the most to them?
Also answer that because I've had some natural disasters. I actually had a house burned down in 2015. So yeah, there is also a house that burns down in the course of the Phoenix Crown. And so that came very much from personal experience. And I can tell you the thing that I ran to save, that my husband and I ran to save, was the dog. We pretty much got out of there with, I was standing in bare feet with the dog, and that was what we had. Like, I did not, you know, like, I have to admit, I did not, I should have grabbed my wallet on the way out the door. I did recover it later, so I didn't have to redo all of my ID cards, but it was the dog. And that was the reason why in this particular book, I ended up giving Gemma a pet. She has a pet bird, which is the only thing that she can really keep when she travels a lot, which opera singers do. And it is going back for the bird that actually enabled me to do the thing where, you know, you have to sometimes during a disaster in a book, you have to give the heroine an excuse to go back somewhere into danger. And you don't want the reader to think, oh my God, she's just so stupid for going back into danger. Why didn't she just cut her losses? Well, the thing is I gave her the pet because if she just went back, because, well, I need to get a few clothes for the, you know, that would make the reader think you are too stupid to live. But if she's going back for her pet, if she's going back for her bird, people can understand that. You go back for your pets. I know I went back for my pets, and my husband did too. And he ended up doing the thing that happens in the course of the book, where you breathe and then hold your breath very, very long time to run into smoke and not inhale it while you're trying to find something. In his case, he was trying to find the dog, and he found him and he pulled him out. But that's the reason I did it, and that's certainly what I went for when it was a fire in my life. So that's the only way I can answer that question.
I think you had set it up well to show how much the bird meant to her, you know, throughout, so that naturally she would want to go back and save it.
Now, funnily enough, in early drafts, she didn't have a bird; she had a tortoise, and I had like a carrying case for it, and I was like, "This is way too unwieldy. Like a tortoise in a carrying case. I can't do this. It does not work." So it became a bird instead, and that kind of worked better in terms of what it was that a singer could carry around a little more easily. And you know, a singer likes a bird, you know, because she has a budgie, and they can even, you know, speak a little bit the way parrots can. And so the bird even does a little bit of talking. I think we got all of our questions in the chat, but does anybody have any last few?
Simon and Dorothy?
There was a comment early on about when you were talking about how seamless the book is, and somebody else had commented on that, agreeing, and I would too. I felt as if it just moved, it just flowed from one chapter to the other, and that the characters meshed really well.
Thank you.
Makes us so happy when we hear that.
Well,
I-
Simon and I were corresponding by email in between times, and we both had pretty much the same comment about being unable to put the book down.
Oh, thank
That
you.
makes us really happy too.
I did have one quick question that kind of came to my mind, and I wasn't sure if maybe you've been asked this question before, but how superstitious were people in the 1900s? Like at the beginning of the book, when Gemma's on the train to San Francisco, there's that high flying roller person who kind of who prophesied that San Francisco would be be destroyed by an earthquake and fire by the end of April, which actually was almost pretty close to being true. But like how superstitious were people in the 1900s?
Well, I can tell you that that particular bit came out of one of the nonfiction books about the account that I read. There really was the flying rollers of Benton Harbor, Michigan, who sent some representatives to go and like preach to the people of San Francisco about how they needed to save their sin and mend their sinful ways, or the city would be swallowed by fire. And if they did not, and that really did happen. And the thing is, though, is that apparently when the flying rollers heard about the fact that the city had been swallowed by fire and earthquake, they threw a brass band celebration, which just tells you everything you need to know about them. But that really did happen, and I did think that was too good to miss. So I did throw that in as the Gemma's very first scene, as she has an encounter with this woman, this horrible woman who is going on and on about the cesspit of the West. I do think people were superstitious at the time. It is because singers are deeply superstitious, and I know this because I trained as a singer. You really do have this feeling that like you have this capricious little god in your throat. It's not like having a cello that maybe you could care for it externally, and then it's fine. And it's like you never know what your voice is going to do. So singers are superstitious, and performers are. Whenever you perform, you have your little good luck things that go, and the little things that you do to try to ensure that you will perform well. So I do think superstition is a part of it. And then Janie and I talked a bit about Chinese superstition for Su Ling and how would that play into her life.
Debbie's just pointed out that we're almost out of time, but
Yes.
thank you so much. This has
Mhm.
just been a wonderful opportunity to hear about the workings and how you work together. And I know that everybody who's already read the book really enjoyed it, and those who haven't will be going out to get it right away.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's really been a pleasure to be part of your inaugural book discussion.
Thank you.
We are so honored that you asked us. And we're so glad to meet everyone, even if you're just like little squares on the screen.
It's been such a pleasure. You guys are pros, and you guys are like sisters from different, I don't know what the saying is, brothers from different mothers, your sisters from different, you guys just flow so well together. Thank you, Kate and Janie, for taking the time, and thank you to Simon and to Dorothy. And the hour flew by. We could probably go for another hour. So you guys will just have to get your own book clubs to schedule a visit with Janie and Kate, and then you can continue the conversation. And we're super excited that you all joined us. Thank you so much. We do have upcoming book club events scheduled. We've got Wednesday, July 10th is up next, and that's an in-person visit, and that's in discussion of Susie Ormond Schnall's new release, Anna Bright is Hiding Something. And on Wednesday, August 7th, it's going to be a free hybrid in-person and virtual library event in Harrison, New York. And that's going to be in discussion of the Golden Doves with Martha Hall Kelly. Then on Wednesday, September 4th, a double header with New York Times and Sunday Times bestselling authors, respectively, Janet Skesley Charles and Kate Thompson, for discussion of both their books. That's going to be interesting to accomplish in an hour. Miss Morgan's Book Brigade and the Wartime Book Club. And then Wednesday, November 6th, we have another hybrid event with True Grace from acclaimed author Karen Osborne. So we hope you guys will register to sign up for that. And I would ask as a favor, if you guys have feedback, comments, suggestions, we're open. So please email me, Debbie@novelnetwork.com. or just in the general inquiry, we would love to hear back from you. And again, thank you everyone for taking your time tonight. It was delightful, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.